it was kind of a conversation that matured over time, but like, this is what mommy loves to do. You know how you love to play basketball and that's the thing that you really love to do? Like, I love building this company. It's like, it's a real passion of mine. I love it. And so that requires me to go out and open stores and go inspire people and be with other people. And that makes me a better mom.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. We have Alli Webb on the show today. She is the co-founder of Drybar, which I am a huge fan of, and I have been for a very long time. So she founded Drybar and went on to build, and ended up selling it for $255 million. Now, she shares her story in this conversation about how this started organically, how she was a stay-at-home mom. She saw an opening, a problem, she had a solution, and then with her passion and grind, she was able to build and grow and watch this thing just take off. She's been on Shark Tank. She's a New York Times bestselling author. She's also the co-founder of Squeeze and now the president of Canopy, which is a best-in-class humidifier in the beauty industry. So you'll hear about all this, but what I really appreciate about Alli is that she is very open about the journey. It might look one way from the outside, but she shows us behind the scenes. She shows us backstage, some of the mess, a lot of the mess that happens with this kind of growth and this kind of momentum. And she talks about being a mom through all of this. She talks about her marriage and her new marriage. And really, there was nothing off limits. We recorded this conversation live on stage at the Renegade Summit in San Diego. So you get to hear firsthand, some of the questions that we asked her from the audience, but also the audience just response, which you can tell. We're big fans of Alli Webb. She's now become a personal friend and total renegade here. So without further ado, here is Alli Webb.
Has anybody been to Drybar in this room? Okay, good. Just checking.
Holy smokes. Yes, we have. Okay, so in the spirit of why not now, let's just kick off the way we typically do. Can you tell us about a time when you had a big decision to make and you had to ask yourself, why not now? And we'll dissect that season, day, minute, hour. What do you got?
I mean, it's like, it's happened so many times
every day,
and I think that like to take it back to the Drybar era, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had when I thought I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, which is so funny now that I really I could not wait to have children, and I was a mom, and I found myself at the park every single day with my kids, and when my now ex-husband, there's a whole other story here. But when my ex-husband would come home and I would just be chatting his ear off because I was, talking to little children all day. And so I missed using my brain in that way, being, building something and growing something. I didn't know that really. And it was, it was such an interesting time. And I was like, I really feel like I need to go and do something. I need to work again. I'd been working since I was like 15, and my parents were entrepreneurs, so I worked in their business, and to not be working was just so foreign. And I was like trying to figure out what I could do at this like new mom pace. And so I decided to start a mobile blow dry business. And at that point I had done hair professionally for years, so I knew I could do it no problem. And I started this business called Straight at Home, which was like me running around LA, blow drying all my mommy friends. And, and it was like, easy and perfect. And I was like charging $40, like $220, easy. Like, I'm a pretty like simple girl. And I was like, this will work. I didn't have any idea the scale in which it would work, and that it would ultimately lead to Drybar. But, and to answer your question of why not now, it's like we were, I think sometimes ignorance is bliss. And in 2008, 2009, we were heading into a recession, ironically. And, I was like, I really wanted to turn my mobile business into a brick and mortar because I was seeing so much opportunity in this space. But it would have seemed like a bad time to open a business. And I had, when we were building the first shop in Brentwood in LA, and I would go to the store every day to watch, the progress, and people would walk by and be like, oh, what are you opening here? And I'd be like, a blow dry bar. And they would look at me like I had 10 heads, like, what's a blow dry bar? And I'm like, well, we just do blowouts and whatever. And they're like, every business that's been here has failed. I'm like, awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, but it was that like, how are you opening a business like this in the middle of a recession that's so, unknown? And it was completely unknown. We didn't know if it was going to work. My brother and I, my brother's my business partner, we had to personally guarantee that lease. So if that business didn't work, like we were personally on the hook for it, which of course that all would change. But, and I was like, well, there's not much they can take from me, so whatever.
Good luck.
My brother had some money on the line, but yeah, so it was like, well, why not now?
So I love how organic your path has been to starting and then continuing on. And one of the things about Drybar, which we've all been there, but it's the triple threat, right? You get to relax because someone's doing your hair. You can get some work done if you want. Hello. And then you're good to go for 5 to 10 days. 10, maybe 6, right?
It varies.
Yeah. And how much time, how efficient is that? Talk about ROI of your time, right? We are all very busy, so brilliant. But this was such an organic process. And now we have entrepreneurs and this romanticism around startups where people are thinking about scaling before they even have a business concept. It's like, how do I scale? How do I scale? It's like, well, what are you building? I don't know. But that has flipped, and it bugs me when
I hear
it's like,
you.
hold up, let's just get something. Let's get a proof of concept here first. How do you feel about that?
Oh my God, proof of concept. If my brother was sitting right now, he'd be laughing because that was the phrase I heard for like 3 years from my brother. Well, we've got to prove the concept. I'm like, what are you talking about? We've proved the concept because we were so successful in LA in this, what felt like a bit of a bubble in LA. And I was like, we've proved the concept. Women love this. Women are going to love this everywhere, Michael, is what I would tell him. And he was like, I don't know. Skeptical, bald business partner,
Oh my god.
It's my favorite joke. So, and it was really interesting. And I do now, kidding aside, understand that because, we went from like LA, Orange County. But I'll tell you guys too, Brentwood was like, lightning in a bottle, and we hit it, and it was busy, and it was crazy, and it was amazing. And then within 6 months, right away, we were already like, we were too busy to handle all the demand. I didn't have enough hairstylists. It was like a total shit show in the beginning, and we like had to like catch our breath and figure it out.
Was it Daily Candy that wrote
Yes.
about you? And
Daily,
all of a sudden,
yeah. I mean, do you guys remember Daily Candy? Like R.I.P. Daily Candy. I love Daily Candy.
Oh yeah.
Because Daily Candy was like broke all the cool things. So and we worked really hard to get into Daily Candy. Which, the hustle, it's like at every level. And Daily Candy wrote that piece, and like clockwork, that piece ran. And this was back when we still had Blackberries. Remember that too?
Oh yeah.
And then my brother and I were sitting at lunch talking about the business, and all of a sudden our Blackberries started like buzzing, and we were like, what's going on? We were getting all these email notifications of people who had booked blowouts.
think
And
it was a
we
mistake?
thought it was a mistake. We're like, oh my God,
Malfunctioning.
call the, spa booker. It's malfunctioning, but it wasn't. And people were booking blowouts. Yeah. But yeah, so, once we opened that first store and it was on fire and it was amazing. And then I was like, we've got to open more stores. And at the time my brother was still running another company and he wasn't like fully in. And I was in the store, 7 days a week, 6 months. I was there every waking hour. But I was like, Mike, we got to open more stores. Like, go find us another lease. And so we opened our second store in Studio City, just over the hill, if you know LA. And it took a minute. Like, it wasn't like guns blazing the way Drybar Brentwood was. And we were like, oh shit, like, wait, maybe this isn't working, and then we put a lot of, I was going to like all the local schools and setting up, blowouts on a table and selling them for cheaper to get people in the door. Like, we had to hustle and work for it.
What did that do to your confidence in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little like, it was like this. It was like, wait a second, everybody loves Drybar. Brentwood is so busy. Is it only Brentwood? And this is back to the proof of yeah. And then eventually, I mean, I did everything in my power. I called every favor in. I asked all of my friends who lived in the valley. Like, I did everything I could do to get that store off the ground, and it worked. And then now Studio City, by the way, happens to be one of the busiest in the system. But and the same thing happened in West Hollywood. We opened on Sunset in Sunset Plaza. Same thing. It was like, I can remember, because I'm sure I was a little traumatized from this, like it being me, the store manager, and like one stylist in that big, beautiful store, and like panic. I was like, oh my God, maybe it doesn't work, and we do the same thing. We just start the hustle. And so, over time that started to decrease, and over time, our name started to grow, and we got tons of press, and we were doing so much stuff, and it obviously started to take off, but it was a little bit like dicey there in the beginning, trying to prove this new concept. And it was new and people didn't totally get it. And like, they'd walk by and think it was a bar. Like, I mean, it was just
educating first, then awareness, then
it was all of it. And we had to keep like going to make it, what it ultimately became. And then we'd go into, I think our second market was Dallas, which of course makes so much sense.
I was can I dig into that? I'd love to hear more about it.
It's funny because Dallas women, when I'm in Dallas and I'm like, I know you guys like your hair a little bigger, and they're like, no, we don't. And I'm like, okay, and it's like these big, big hairs coming out. But and those markets, worked pretty quickly, and then Arizona, and we just, we slowly started to infiltrate the U.S. and a lot of those early conversations were like, we've got to prove this concept. And another thing that I remember my brother would say to me a lot, and my brother is like my best friend, and he's a really smart business guy, so definitely like a mentor of mine. He was like, this is ours to mess up. We've got to like figure out how to do this and not mess it up, because we're on, we're sitting on a gold mine, but it's ours to lose, to ruin. Yeah.
Amazing. And fast forward. Okay. So we have so much to get to, and make sure you keep me on time here, because I feel like I'm in a different land. Talk about flow. Okay, so it takes off, and you've talked about how you went from doing what you love to then now you're managing people, then you're managing more people, and now you've got investors, and then eventually you do get to that exit. Kind of circling back to what Marcus Buckingham just shared. How do you continuously stay in love with what you do, or find that as you've evolved from doing something that you loved into all these other hats, and now, even other companies that you've founded as well as you're leading. So how do you keep your eye on that target and move with it?
Well, I think, to go back to the early days of building Drybar, and yes, I mean, going from running the store every day and managing stylists to like opening more stores and managing managers. And, I wasn't really great at it. I did the best I could, and I'd watched my parents, and I'd, worked for a lot of people. So I took the things that I liked and didn't like, but I was a maniac. I was, out of control. My husband is sitting here in the front row, and he coaches founders and entrepreneurs. And
hi, Adrian.
We always joke about like founders are maniacs, we're all over the place, and we're crazy. Oh yeah. We're a little crazy, but it's part of our brilliance, right? And and I didn't know. I also felt this immense pressure. Like, I was I was the face of the brand. I was at the helm of this company. Like, I had to have all the answers. I didn't know how to do everything, and And that was the pressure I put on myself, rightfully so, because everybody was coming to me for answers and guidance. And my brother, shared a lot of that too. But I definitely put this pressure on myself. And what I would learn much later in this whole journey of building Drybar is that like I could ask for help and I could get other people to help me. And it was really my brother who, even in the early days, was, I remember one of our first big hires, we hired this woman who had run Pinkberry and like Taco Bell, and so really had experience in scaling. And we were going to have to pay her this crazy salary, and we were basically not taking a salary. And I was like, what are we paying her? Like, why? And he was, he had talked to a lot of people who've run other businesses. He's like, we have to hire ahead of the curve, and we have to hire somebody who knows what they're doing so we can actually grow this thing. And again, not mess it up, And so all of that stuff was so much learning for me. And I fumbled so much in that time. And I bring up Adrian because I had other friends, all my friends are like founders of companies. That's just like the world I live in. And I remember a good friend of mine, Ellen Bennett, who has an apron company, Headley Bennett. She was on my podcast and she was talking about how she hired a coach. And I was like, what? That's so silly. You don't need a coach, And I really was like, I thought it was like this silly thing, which we he loves when I talk about that. But I learned how important it is to have somebody who's like kind of keeping you honest, someone who's like you're talking to about these work things that are coming up and how you're dealing with yourself and how you're dealing with other people. I was kind of avoidant of a lot of those tough conversations. I didn't really know how to have them or what to do. And so so much learning happened in that time for me. And looking back, I feel like I would have, now I would do it so much differently and probably better. But, not that I live in regret, because I don't. Like, I'm totally cool and happy with how it all happened. It's just I've learned so much, and I've totally gotten away from the question that you asked me.
No, that's okay. We're good. There are no rules. So I have been a customer of Drybar for, you said early day, like Phoenix Market. I was there. And so when you said yes to joining us today, and I start researching more and have been a fan from afar and have a great deal of respect for what you've built and what you've done, but I didn't know too much about you personally. So I'm going on a run, and I'm like looking through all the podcasts that you've been on and your own, and I'm like, okay, which one am I going to start with? And of course, I did the How I Built This with Guy Raz,
yeah.
Which was 2016, 17, yeah. Right? Which I got the nuts and bolts, and I got the business. Okay, cool. And then I see, here's this one, and you start talking about your personal life more, which you've been very open about. Thank you. For being real and also being willing to go there, because we do see so many women, not so many, we see certain women who have reached a level of success that you have, which is pretty rare, that there's a picture there, but it's not the full story. Yeah. And so you've shared the full story. Can you talk a little bit about, I like to call it psychological safety instead of vulnerability, but we can call it whatever we want, your decision to open up and share the valleys, because you captured me and I went on a long run during these podcasts because you're so real. And then let's talk about a couple of the valleys, because why not?
Why not? We're mostly girls in here, women in here, except for Adrian. Dan. Hi, Dan. It happened pretty organically, I think, because I had been on this, very focused, I had dealt with a lot of burnout because I was, totally working my ass off, and it was great and exciting and exhilarating. But, I was married. I got married when I was 27, and my ex-husband is the creative genius behind Drybar and Squeeze and all these, and he's so talented, and he's an amazing man. But we were like best friends, and then we had kids a year after we were married, and then we had Drybar. And so our lives were just crazy. And I didn't really slow down to pay a lot of attention to the fact that our marriage wasn't what it should be. And of course now on the other side of this, I do understand what it feels like to have, true love and to feel that kind of love, which I didn't really have. I was best friends with my ex-husband, and it was, it really mirrored a lot of my parents' relationship, which is, well, a whole other story. But
we do have therapists in the audience if you want.
I only realized that like a year ago too, by the way. But you know, I think initially why I started to talk about it publicly was because we were in the business together, and people knew that, and I think I felt more of a like responsibility to all the people that were within the Drybar organization. You know, I mean, we had, I mean, gosh, 4,000 stylists. I mean, so many people working with us, and they all knew, you know, the founding story. It was like me and my brother and my husband, and now people were like, knew there were rumblings of us splitting up. And so what does that do to the business? And I think even like my brother and our then CEO, John, everybody was like, I think we kind of need to tell people what's going on, because it's like causing like people to talk about it and whatever.
Was this pre-acquisition?
Yeah. This was like,
of course,
5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I felt like, okay, I think I need to like publicly acknowledge this, really more for my Drybar community than anything else. And so, I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. Like I wrote like this long thing. I sent it to my ex-husband to approve and said, I'm going to just kind of put it out there and say, this is what's going on. You know, we're after 17 years, we've decided to separate. You know, what you say, we're putting our kids first, like the business is not going to suffer, and blah, blah. And I think that like, it was interesting, the response to that, which was like crazy. And people were like, you know, so kind and so supportive and so appreciative of it. And, you know, and I just felt like I wanted, at that point, I feel like I like this like level of transparency, and, you know, and I felt really just called, I guess, to put myself out there and to be, you know, more open. And the feedback I got was like, and which I would continue to get as I continued to be more transparent, was it was relatable to them. And so women would start, and I still to this day get so many, you know, messages from women. Sometimes they're like, I'm thinking about leaving my husband. Do you think I should? I'm like, I don't know. Like, you know, but there is this like, oh, you know, and it was funny. I was just talking to, Sarah, who's out there. Hi, Sarah. And we were, you know, talking about, you know, now I just lost my train of thought that I went to find you.
Thinking about leaving my husband. Should I?
Well, it's just interesting how women reach out to me and, you know, for advice, or like, if you did it, I can do it, you know, and I feel like and I can't tell you how many messages I get from women who are like, I've, you know, listen to you. I recently did a podcast. I don't know if you guys listened to Lauren Bostic's Skinny Confidential. She had a great podcast, and I was on there.
I listened to that one.
Yeah,
it's a great episode.
She's great, and I'm good friends with her and her husband. So you know, it's like sometimes I'm talking and I forget that I'm like being recorded, and I'm like, oh shit, I probably shouldn't say that, and like
good,
edit it, you know,
Yeah.
because I get so comfortable, and in a room, especially in a podcast, it's a very casual setting, good friend, and so I was talking a lot about like, you know, having a sexless marriage and blah blah blah, and you know, got really kind of personal, and then all these women started reaching out to me like, I'm in this same boat as you, and your episode gave me the courage to like move on from a marriage that was really unhealthy, you know. And it's like that kind of stuff I've heard after I do anything public and talk about this kind of stuff. And so I think it feels like I'm inspiring people to do what they need to do. And so I think that is why, you know, when I think about, and I get asked that a lot, like, why are you vulnerable? Why? And some of my friends are like, do you really have to tell everybody everything? And I'm like, well, I'm just an open book, and it's just, you know, who I am and what I, again, feel called to do. And I also like other people being transparent with me. Like, I love when I'm talking to somebody and they tell me what's like really going on in their life versus the like, yeah, everything's great, you know, the bullshit small talk. I don't like it, and I don't like to give it, you know,
to that.
Yeah. So allergic. I think that's just like what I'm drawn to.
Which is amazing. And it's, you know, I've got two areas I'd love to cover before we open up for Q&A, but we were last night, you know, all hanging out, and I probably had 4 or 5 discussions with different women, all very driven, high-powered, like putting points on the board, but it ended up about childcare, or ended up about being on the road. And you had your children and Drybar, right, in the same season, right? So personal question. So I'm gonna be that person that's like DMing
do
you
it.
like, hey, what should I do? So I get this email yesterday. I get a text message from Lincoln, who's my son. He's 3. He just went to Montessori school.
He sent you a text message?
No, his.
I was like, wow.
His guide. Yeah, he's good. Digital native, right? So he's in this little Montessori school, and there's 8 of the kids, right? It's in a house. It's a schoolhouse. And she said, hey, Lincoln keeps saying he misses his mommy, and he wants to cuddle, and he wants to take a nap early. And I'm like, okay, this is new. Well, then I get an email. Hey, he's been saying this more. And so this is the first time in my experience having, we all travel a lot, where it's fine if I miss him, but I don't want him to be, you know what I mean? I don't want that pain on him. And you had to have navigated that constantly for years, and we are as well. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I talked about a lot. My boys are 15 and 17 now, which is like, oh my God, it's great. I have like men in my house. It's so weird. But when they were little, they were 3 and 5 when I started Drybar, and luckily I had my mom who was, we moved kind of wherever we moved, and so she was with my boys a lot, which was really a saving grace, and I was so lucky for that. But yeah, I mean, I remember Grant, my son who's now 17, saying to me, like, when I was going to New York, like, why do you have to go to New York? Can't you just open Drybars here? Just this very like innocent, sweet. And I mean, obviously 3's a little young for this advice, but the feedback I always gave my sons, and like, listen, I believe objectively I have really like well-adjusted children, and they've been through a lot. They've been through divorce, went through rehab. Like we've gone down the road.
Check the boxes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But what I always told my kids, and what I always really felt was like, it was kind of a conversation that matured over time, but like, this is what mommy loves to do. You know how you love to play basketball, and that's the thing that you really love to do? Like, I love building this company. It's like, it's a real passion of mine. I love it. And so that requires me to go out and open stores and go inspire people and be with other people. And that makes me a better mom, And so when I come home, I feel really filled up and fulfilled and happy. And, I would, as they got older, this conversation would be like less mature or more mature, but it was that sentiment that like I'm role modeling for them hard work, and I would tell them, like, why we have this nice house and we just built this pool in our backyard? It's because mommy and daddy work really hard for that stuff, so we can provide you a really great life. And that is something I want my children to think about as they grow up, and know that like hard work, it's fulfilling, and it enables you to have the life that you want to have. So it was a lot of those conversations with my kids about like, this makes me really happy, and it's important that I'm really happy too. And it's important that you're really happy and you have what you need, but mommy needs to be happy too. And I remember, it didn't happen a lot, but I remember them, and you know how you remember these like negative things. Like I remember someone like commenting on an Instagram about me, like, well, you shouldn't have had kids if you were going to be traveling so much, like some stupid comment like that, and I was like, first of all, you don't get to comment on my life. No, second of all, like I love having children. My children are like the most important thing to me in my life, but I also like want my kids to grow up also wanting to work really hard and aspire to greatness and whatever that means for them. And so I wanted them to see their mom and their dad, doing that as well. And so I think that was like, it's okay to miss. It's okay that he misses you, and it's okay that my kids would miss me. It's actually great. It's such great feedback, Yeah. And then you come home and you love them and you are present and intentional with them. And as my kids were getting older, and my time was really crunched, and I was doing all the things, and I would go to therapy and I would talk to my therapist about it. And I remember one of the great pieces of advice that I still love to this day was like, when you come home, and let your kids know that they will have 20 minutes of uninterrupted time. Put your phone away, and 20 minutes, do anything they want to do for 20 minutes, just them. And I would start doing that. My kids loved it, and they would say, they would say, Mommy, when's my 20 minutes? Where's my 20 minutes? When they were younger. And it really worked, and they loved it, and they knew it was like their special one-on-one time to do whatever they wanted.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe,
rate and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us.
You probably know Kat Cole.
Yeah.
So
I
Kat
love
gave
her.
me some advice a couple years ago. She said, mom pride versus mom guilt. You really got to focus on that pride. And one of the things we do in our household is we get to do things, right? Mommy gets to go to work. Don't have to. And the other day he said, hey, mama, I get to go to work too. But I think seeing that hard work.
And that is, I mean, I feel like Adrienne says that a lot. And, you know, we talk about that a lot in our house. Like, we have this privilege to go and serve other people and do other things. It's not like, I have to go to work. Like, we don't ever talk like that because I don't feel like that. Like, I love going to work. I love what I do. I love all the opportunities that come my way, and like that I get to be in rooms like this. And I want my kids, such a great point, to grow up with that, like, we get to do this and we love what we do, so it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah, we were FaceTiming yesterday. He said, Mama, you're hanging out with your friends? And I was like, yes, I am. And they're going through the car wash the other day, and someone was helping dry, and Lincoln said to Richard, what's this person doing? And he said, oh, that he's working really hard and drying the car. And he said, oh, like mama? And I was like, oh.
I mean, that sentiment is for me too. I mean, even to this day, when my kids were young, I'd say, I'm so proud of you. And they always respond, I'm so proud of you, Mom.
They witnessed your journey. Okay, let's talk money really quick, right? Okay. Love to talk money.
Love money.
Wealth. Love money.
Let's be honest.
You gotta love money. Has your relationship with money changed over the last several years?
That's a good question. I mean, yes.
Rightfully so.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first had kids and we first moved to LA, and LA was we were living in New York City, and, but I wasn't before LA, and I wasn't working, and I was with the kids, and I really like to shop. And so, packages would be showing up every day, and my ex-husband would be really stressed about it and annoyed and frustrated, and was like, well, and I really didn't have a great sense of how much I was really spending. I knew I couldn't buy Chanel, but I could order some things from Old Navy and it'd just be a lot,
I'm looking for Suzanne. She used to work at Old Navy. Corporate. Yeah, she's. Yeah.
I mean, you can really load up, So anyways, my ex-husband was like, okay, I think we should put you on a budgeting app, which was really brilliant. And so I was on this app that was I knew how much money I could spend every month, and every time I spend money, I'd put it, I'm sure there's better apps now, but I'd put it in the app, and it would say how much I had left over for the last month, and I kind of liked the game of it, you know?
Yeah, numbers.
And so I was really, responsible with that. And then even once we started Drybar and we started to have success, I still, I mean, I think my salary was $30,000 for the first 4 years. So it wasn't nothing was really changing, and then things started to change. And then I started to have a real salary. And I remember my brother bought me a Celine bag for Christmas, I think around the 5-year mark. And I was it was my first designer
How cool that
bag.
He bought it for you, your partner. Yeah.
He also, by the way, surprised me with a new Mercedes, when I was coming out of IKEA with my kids shopping one day, and I was he's oh, it was this whole joke that they were all in on, and I walked out and there was a Mercedes, and I was oh my God, I'd always had Nissans, so that was really cool. And so, as time has gone on, I've, and we've sold the business, and my relationship to money has changed, but I'm still I'm not going to look at Adrian because he's going to not agree with this. I feel I'm still pretty responsible when it comes to money. And I'm aware and I'm cognizant of what I'm spending and how much I'm spending, and the levels of what I can spend and where I can shop has definitely changed and all of that. But I'm still really aware of it. And I'm also not financially exactly where I want to be at, and I don't know if that will ever go away, but I still feel really driven to build more things, to grow more companies, to sell more companies, and to have, more success, and to be able to do, buy that ranch that I want to buy in Texas somewhere.
In Texas.
So I mean, I still have a lot of goals and dreams of things, but I also recognize that I'm really blessed and fortunate for all I have. So I feel I have a good relationship with money, and I am very aware of what I'm spending, and I just like anybody else. I think no matter what stage you're at financially, I still stress out sometimes about money or how much things cost, and I need to keep myself in check still.
We have a whole discussion later on this afternoon about investing, due diligence. We were talking last night a little bit about Renegade Global Venture and putting together special purpose vehicles to be able to stick ourselves on cap tables and really democratize the flow of capital, but also the access to deal flow.
Yeah.
And so with you and where you see both at Canopy, which by the way, we do have to tell everybody what Canopy is, and as you've seen the whole spectrum of funding from literally I've got a car and a hairdryer to an acquisition to raising various stages, what advice would you give to the new angel investors in the room? So we have a lot of first-time angel investors who are building their own wealth creation through some of these opportunities. So any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I've also, invested in, I probably have 15 to 20 very small investments over different businesses. And, of course, they're not going to all pay off necessarily, and I think that I'm an angel investor, to some degree too. And for me, it's like, I invest from my heart and I'm investing in the people who are running the company. For me, that's the first kind of hurdle to get over of how much does this person want this, is kind of how I view all my investment opportunities. How invested is this person? And, to give you an example, one of our brands is Squeeze, which is a massage concept, and it's the same founding team as Drybar. And we brought our old head of marketing, Brittany Driscoll, to run it. And Brittany is one of the hardest working women I've ever known, and I would bet on her all day long, and that is the kind of passion and determination that I'm looking for in companies that, obviously a lot of other boxes have to be checked and it's got to be a healthy business and all of that. But for me, it's how hard is this person going to work to make this a reality, and Brittany just happens to be a prime example of that she is not going to give up. And, in the middle of a recession, she's the CEO, she cut her salary in half so that the company didn't go under. I didn't ask her to do that. I'm an investor. I'm on the board. She did that on her own, And so, the kind of person that is going to, do everything it takes to make that company successful is really what I look for when I'm investing in brands. And then also just does this thing, always the North Star for me is, does this thing, scratch an itch? I don't necessarily subscribe to you have to reinvent the wheel, you have to come up with the iPhone, but is there something out there that could be done better and executed better, which is really how we've come from our businesses, with Squeeze and with Drybar. Blowouts existed, massages exist. We've created a better experience, a better space for these businesses, and that's what I look for, in businesses. How are you making this different and better than anything that's available now?
Amazing. Great advice. And a couple rapid fire questions, and then we'll take them from the audience. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What keeps you up at night?
Other than my children, literally. No. I think I have to say I sleep better than I used to because I've come around to things are going to happen the way that they're supposed to happen and trying to not hold so tightly. But yeah, I have a lot of different projects that I'm doing. I'm working on my second book. I was telling you we're doing this event called the Impact Series, and we're selling tickets to that October 15th in LA. It's a big entrepreneurial event, and it's I think I worry are people do people care what I have to say
just
anymore?
Just the second Drybar store, right?
Yeah.
You're still,
I don't know. You don't know.
Still,
and you just can't take any of it for granted, And I think that's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night, not in an unhealthy way, but more of a I love when I'm laying, when my head is on the pillow and I'm quiet with my thoughts. And it's really when I think about things and things hit me of what else can I do? What's things, my brain just kind of wanders.
We're maniacs.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial.
We're maniacs, yes.
Okay, so when I say the word renegade, who comes to mind?
Well, I think of women on horses riding to like a finish line,
Love
like
it.
we're gonna kick ass and we're coming for you,
We always say you can't put a saddle on a Mustang, right?
Yeah, see, I know,
which
like
is
this
not
horse
an original
thing.
quote for me. It was
I love it.
NBA player, but
I love it.
Okay, and then what's one lesson you find yourself learning over and over? This is an Oprah question, by the way. I totally stole it.
To enjoy the journey, and to like really enjoy it. I think I get so stuck in what I just said. Like, I'm worried this is going to happen. I'm worried they aren't going to like me. I'm worried this isn't there, blah, blah, blah. All the things that I worry about, instead of just like, I think that you can shift your mindset to like, I'm just going to enjoy this process of building, because I love building.
Mm-hmm.
I love building something, no matter if it's a business or an event, or I'm excited but nervous about my second book coming out. It is it's a memoir, so it's going to be a very personal with a lot of business stuff in it. But like, will anybody give a shit? And I'm kind of scared about that. But you know what? I can't like get caught in that. I have to just enjoy this process of building and telling people and hopefully inspiring people.
Amazing. How can we help you?
Well, in lots of ways.
Bring it.
Come to our event in October in LA, downtown LA, October 15th. Adrian will be there if you want to get some coaching. And we're having, we have...
Even though coaches are...
I know. I think he might do some live coaching on stage. How fun would that
cool.
be? Yes.
Ooh, I need
He's
this.
very, very direct.
Awesome.
Like, sometimes a little much. And... So, I'll be there, and Candace Nelson, the founder of Sprinkles, which I'm sure you guys know, and Joy Cho, who is an amazing entrepreneur herself, my friend Nikeo, who's is basically rebranding all the Sephoras inside JCPenney's to a company called 13 Loon, and she's going to be there. We have a couple surprises still coming, and it's going to be a really cool event where we're, similar to this, where we're talking about our stories and the blood, sweat, and tears that it takes to build a business, and what things we've learned along the way, and to like really inspire people. So that's this thing that's really near and dear to my heart, because I keep feeling this pull to help inspire other women, especially like new and up and coming founders, because we didn't have that. When I started Drybar 12 years ago, it was like you could really count on one hand like female founders that you knew about. I mean, I didn't.
It was 2009.
It's 2010.
My first come in 2009.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it
there
was like
no one.
there was no. I mean, there was like, I knew Wendy Zomner, who had started Urban Decay. You guys know that. I knew her because, and I didn't even know her till a couple years in, because we had the same private equity. And it was just, there just wasn't a lot of women who were out there walking the walk, talking the talk, that you could get inspired from. And I really relish that role and really want to continue to be that. And and I get girls all the time from like high school, and I just did an interview yesterday with a girl at USC who's in the entrepreneurship program. Like, I'll talk to those people all day long because I want to inspire them and be hopeful to them. So that's kind of why this Impact series is near and dear to my heart. So it's all over my Instagram. If it's Alli Webb, if anybody wants to check it out. And so, yeah.
Amazing. And a quick shout out to Sloan over here, who is
my amazing agent.
Renegade, yes, who represents Alli at William Morris Endeavor, and she's a part of the crew. So make sure you'll hear from her tonight. Do we have a minute or two for questions? I'm looking for the bosses in the back. Yes. Dan, you have a question?
Good question, Alan. Nice to meet you. This is my daughter, Lily, by the way.
Hi, Lily.
She goes to college tomorrow.
Amazing.
And Amy gave me the blessing to have her attend today, so this is amazing. She's going to be a future entrepreneur. She has it in her for sure. The one question I want to ask you about, when you go back to your childhood, think about your parents, how you were raised, how do you apply what you learned when you were young to what you do today?
Oh, it's such a good question, because it's so... It's such an important part of my story. And my parents had their own business, and so my brother and I worked in their stores. It was like little old lady clothing stores in South Florida, but my parents were really smart. They opened them in like the retirement communities, and my dad was like the mayor, and he would give all the men coffee and newspaper so their women would shop and spend more money. And my brother and I grew up in these stores, and we watched a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, like of being. I remember I used to tell my mom I wanted her to be a cookies and milk mom. I wanted her to be home after school when I got home and make me cookies and milk. I don't know where I got that from, but that was my thing. And and she had probably a similar conversation with me of like, hey, I really like working and this is what I do and you're okay by yourself, after school and whatever. And I grew up in that same entrepreneurial environment that my kids are growing up in. And I think it's and I've seen it, I'm sure you probably see it with your daughter. It's like you see your kids, my kids are like, they've already started businesses. They're trying to start businesses. They're really driven. And I like to believe a lot of that comes from, watching us work really hard and have a really, great work ethic. And also this I think there's like this generation of like, if you pay me more, I'll work harder, not like work harder and then I'll pay you more mentality, which really drives me crazy because I was taught from my parents, like you be the person that shows everybody else up. You work as hard. You do every job. You be the person that they will not get rid of, and that's just how I grew up in that mentality. And I want my kids to grow up at that same, like, I'm going to be the hardest person working in the room, So I think my childhood, and I didn't know it, of course, growing up. I'm sure I complained. I know I complained a lot about working, but I ultimately did it, and I feel really grateful that I had that, and I didn't know I was getting it, but it will turn out to serve me now as I've grown up, for sure.
Such a good question.
Where are you going to college, Lily? Amazing.
UCSB. And by the way, Dan Cobby, if for those of you who don't know him, he's introduced us to so many renegades. Sherry, I don't know where you are, but I'm sure you're in here back there. And has been an incredible mentor and supporter of women, getting women seats on cap tables. I know a lot of you are investors in Circle AI. The reason I'm on the board and why I originally invested is because I was invited in by Dan. So he is... this is a conversation that I get frustrated about, but there have been so many situations where, like your brother even, like taught you so much. And this isn't a women versus men community whatsoever. We are a huge bridge. It just doesn't work that way. So I just want to thank Dan, and also that's a perfect example of how we really do. However your elevator comes, get in, go up, and send it back down, right? It doesn't matter who sends it to you, who they are, get in.
Yeah,
because that's how we scale elevation, right?
I totally agree, and and it's like, I want to talk to Dan too, because
you should.
Because
I'm sure he wants to talk. And I'm an investor in his company too, by the way. Best investor ever. Yeah, Court Avenue.
What is it?
It's called Court Avenue. He's got quite the story. He's had a couple of amazing exits under his belt too. You guys could talk.
Yeah, I'd love it. But I was just talking earlier about being an opportunist, which I think has like a negative connotation, that word. But I feel like, I'm like, I want to talk to Dan. What can Dan do for me?
Yeah,
and what can I do? Who knows?
But versus why is Dan here?
Yeah, and what can I do? I'm obviously wanting to give back, but I also want to like grow and learn. And about 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted to maybe consider joining some boards, and so I reached out to a lot of. Honestly, it was a lot of men I knew at that time who were in like the private equity and who were on our, board of Drybar, and was like, hey, I kind of want to do this. How do I do this?
Yeah.
Well, you just got to start telling people that you want to join some boards. And like, sure enough, I'm on like 4 boards now,
Exactly.
It's just, you just put yourself out there and talk to people and take every opportunity you can. It's really powerful. I'm sure you guys all know this, but just saying.
And you're sitting here today because of another gentleman, Brad Slater, who will be here on the stage tomorrow, who introduced me to Sloan indirectly, and we DM'd too. Yeah. And they work together. It's
full circle.
Yeah, it really
100%,
is.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question because I recently listened to a podcast this morning that you're involved with a company called Canopy.
Yes. Oh, yes. Canopy.
Interested in like why you decided to go work for an already existing company.
I know we bookmarked that and we never circled
We never
back.
came back. Thank you for bringing
Sarah,
that up.
for
You're
bringing
the best.
That up.
Well,
Worst interviewer ever.
not at all. That was an interesting pivot for me. And I think in this like next iteration and having sold Drybar and wanting to just expand and try new things. And I actually got connected to the founder of Canopy because I was looking and thinking, which I still am. I have so many ideas in my head, and I was like, maybe I should start like my own product line. And I'm still thinking about that, like a hair product line. And I got connected to this guy Justin through another friend, and And it wasn't the right fit for a hair product line, but he was like, I have this company called Canopy, which I'd never heard of. And have any of you have heard of Canopy? A couple? Yeah. I mean, they're a new brand. They've been around about a little over a year. They're humidifiers, which again, you kind of feel, and when he said that to me, I was like, why are you telling me about humidifiers? Like, but then he was like, well, one of the other founders, his girlfriend who lives in New York City, was using her old, like, blue, not cute, moldy humidifier that she would clean like every Sunday for like 3 hours. And he was like, why are you doing this? Like, why do you have a humidifier going next to the bed 24/7? And she's like, well, it's the ultimate beauty hack, because when my skin is hydrated, my skincare works better, my makeup looks better, my scalp is better, my hair looks better. And I was like, what? I was like, this is embarrassing. Like, I really pride myself on being like a beauty connoisseur. I'm like, why don't I know about this? And as like a woman who's aging and whatever, I'm like, it also like conceals fine lines and wrinkles, because if when your skin is dry, like in the winter especially, it's like it's and the moisture is sucked out of your face. It's not a good look. So, the genius of having a humidifier that isn't, first of all, that looks cute and chic in your house is like, check. That's important to me. And the fact that you don't have to, it doesn't get moldy. It actually has anti-mold technology in it. You only have to like change this filter every 6 weeks, which they send you. It's also a subscription model, which is just such a great business. I was like, I tried to figure that out for a long time with Drybar.
You had me for a while, the membership.
Yeah, but I mean the products, to get products on subscription. I mean, you basically, when you buy a Canopy, you can get it for a lower price if you become a subscriber, and then they send you every 6 weeks. Some of you are shaking your heads like, every 6 weeks they send you the aromas, which are also amazing, and the new filter. And I was like, this is a genius business, and they had done like 10 million in the first year, and I was like, what? Like, I know no one, I'd not heard of it, no one, and whatever. And so they sent it to me, and we have like 6 in our house now, and I started using it, and I was like, and then it really didn't hit me until the first time I traveled. And I was like, oh, my skin feels so much drier than when I'm home. So I was hooked and decided, to come aboard. And it was like, well, what does this look like? And I think one of the questions that Sarah asked me was like, so like, you're working for somebody? And I was like, no, I'm not really, I mean, I consider myself, I mean, I guess I kind of am, but I do kind of consider myself in like the founding circle, and we make decisions together. And the title president, I was saying that, titles are like, they're not, I don't know. For me, it was more of like, I'm coming in to help this mission of like educating women on why you need a Canopy humidifier in your bedroom next to your bed. And that was that I got so excited about that mission, and that this seemed like this thing that I was talking about. Humidifiers have been around forever. They just haven't been very good, and it was the same thing with blowouts and massages. And so that's why I got really excited to get on board. And it's very much like a partnership, and we make lots of decisions together. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun, like building and trying to figure out how to build this very different brand. And it's direct to consumer, which isn't really my wheelhouse. So I'm learning a lot as we go, and I'm really enjoying the process.
And imagine the value that this experience is bringing to your board seats as well, and that vice versa. Okay,
There's another question over here, maybe.
Oh, yes. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
Hi.
I was just wondering, so if you go back to when you founded Drybar, what advice would you give your younger self?
I think I feel like I kind of mentioned that I was in the stores every single day for like 6 months, 7 days a week, which I don't think was really healthy. I think it took me a long time to trust other people and to feel like I could not be in the stores. And we had like cameras in the stores, and when I wasn't there, like for the 1 hour I wasn't there, that I would watch them, and I was crazy. And I don't think I needed to be that level of crazy. I think it would have served the company and me better if I had came into this with not having, I come back to like this tight grip, because, I think it's understandable, because when you're starting your own thing and you're so precious about it, and you don't want anybody else to mess it up, and you're so worried. But if I had to look back and tell my younger self, like, it's all really going to be okay, and like, you don't have to be this stressed out about it. And I think that I also, one of the great lessons I learned was, when I did start to let people have more responsibility and gave over the reins to people, I really didn't want them to make a mistake. And I was like, watching you, but then I realized, and I realized like they need to make their own mistakes, and it's okay. Cause I think I had this like ridiculous notion that if they made a mistake and if like an email went out wrong or something was said not the way I wanted it to, like the whole thing was going to blow up and we were all going to have to go home, and that was it. I just was I really remember thinking that way, that like the littlest thing was going to blow the whole thing up. And I now realize that that's just not how it is, and it's okay for mistakes to be made, and it's okay to be transparent, about those mistakes and things that we mess up on. And I think that lesson that took me a long time to learn, I would have better served me if I had learned it sooner.
Okay. I know we need to get you out of here. You've got a schedule.
A bunch of football players coming to my house tonight. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Thank you for the important work you're doing, for being here, sharing your time and wisdom, and just
Thanks for having
being,
me.
A guide. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?